Since Rockstar confirmed back in 2022 that GTA 6 is indeed coming, basically it's caused a lot of industry anticipation, both from fans of GTA and of course from plenty of developers, in fact probably every developer who has a game in the oven not wanting to compete with this thing. It's basically the Taylor Swift new album of the video game world. Everybody does not want to release next to that thing. The Grand Theft Auto franchise has always been a powerhouse, but its last entry, Grand Theft Auto 5, took the series' prominence to another level. Thanks to its hugely successful online mode, it's remained in the top 10 sales chart for more than a decade, and that's also across 2 console generations. One thing is very clear, whenever this thing arrives, it's very unlikely that anybody else releasing in that same window is going to stand a chance, no matter how good those games are. There were initial murmurings of a fall 2025 release, but earlier this year Rockstar made it official. The game is launching May 26th of 2026. The die was cast and studios either celebrated dodging that bullet, like Sucker Punch reportedly did, or trembled while holding a TBA 2026 release slot. So let's take a look at the games that will either stubbornly stick to mid next year and face the consequences, or play it smart by sliding into 2027, or aiming for an early or late year release instead. I'm Jess from What Culture, and here are 20 upcoming games GTA 6 has ruined 2026 for.
Oi, you! What are you buying? What are you selling? Well, I'm so pleased you asked, because if you want to stay safe online and browse freely, NordVPN is running an unbelievable deal at the minute that gets you up to 76% off subscriptions and 3 months free. Just scan the QR code in this video or click the link in the description below and it's all yours.
Saros. Returnal is still one of the PS5's strongest first-party efforts, with its wall-smashing rogue difficulty, a bleak, suffocating atmosphere, and some absolutely wig-peeling third-person combat. It was an exciting step up for developer Housemarque, who managed to bring everything they'd already learned in the space of doing lower-key games into a AAA game that was pretty darn fantastic, so it was not a great surprise that they got snapped up by the publisher pretty soon after. Things were quiet on their next project until early 2025, when a cinematic trailer revealed Saros. With its sci-fi setting, similar game style, this time with permanent upgrades, thank the Lord, and trademark polish, it looked like a bona fide sequel to Returnal, except in name. Sony has since revealed we'll only be getting one first-party tentpole a year for the foreseeable future. That said, both Saros and Wolverine are currently scheduled for 2026. One thing's for sure though, as much goodwill as was generated by the fantastic Returnal, it's no GTA. That said, given its tough as nails kind of format and the things it's trying to do that don't overlap heavily with GTA in that Venn diagram, it might still be safe in that October slot, we'll have to see. Pragmata. Boasting a slick world design, exciting action that plays like a mashup of Dead Space, Stellar Blade, and Vanquish, and the promise of a touching central duo, you'd assume things are looking good for Pragmata. But initially released back in the 2020 PlayStation Hardware Showcase, this one's been cooking for a long time. It's a sci-fi Capcom effort which has a lot of people excited, but now it looks to be competing with GTA 6, and nobody wants that. Capcom is one of the most consistent AAA publishers around, with everything they've released since Resident Evil 7 carrying a lot of polish and quality. Yet their forays into new IP are rare, and the results, Exoprimal and Kunitsugami Path of the Goddess, while solid, failed to ignite sales and were quickly sidelined. Fortunately, both were mid-budget experiments. Pragmata, on the other hand, doesn't have that safety net. This is a massive budget action game that's gonna be looking for big numbers. Launching anywhere near or after GTA 6 would be a death sentence, as it lacks the instant pull of a Devil May Cry or Resident Evil. With the latter's next installment arriving next year, Capcom likely won't risk sabotaging their own lineup. Pragmata's best chance is a late year release window. John Carpenter's Toxic Commando. In what quickly sells itself as an 80s-inspired, genre-tinged take on Left 4 Dead's classic formula of a co-op team versus hordes of undead, Commando doesn't exactly look like a Game of the Year contender. That said though, it does sound, and this is confirmed by the previews that have come out so far, like it's gonna be a hell of a lot of fun. The niche subgenre has lacked a true successor since Valve's series went dormant, and developer Saber Interactive has found success with their mid-budget co-op action games like World War Z and Space Marine 2, so this could scratch a familiar itch. On the flip side, while Carpenter's name is synonymous with landmark horror films spanning 4 decades, and among horror fans, he's practically a living god, with younger gamers, there's the argument to be made that his name may not carry as much weight. Plus, the curse of new IP does loom large. If this launches anywhere near GTA 6, expect it to be crushed beyond recognition. With a slew of similar titles already releasing non-stop, and with Helldivers 2 being the only one that's really gained real traction, the cards are already stacked against it. So let's hope Commando can find a sweet spot to capture players' attention once they're done carjacking in Vice City. Judas. For a lot of gamers, the first BioShock is absolute hallowed ground, a slam dunk with a fantastic narrative, intriguing mechanics, and world building that's kind of unparalleled in the space, even now. The sequels weren't too bad either in retrospect, and it's a franchise that holds a special place in a lot of people's hearts. But any form of follow-up has been absent for over a decade. From recent rumblings, it's not like they haven't been trying, but without BioShock's creator Ken Levine, it's hard to get excited. Levine instead has been hard at work at his new studio, Ghost Story Games, tinkering away on one single game for over a decade, coincidentally. Finally revealed in 2022 at the Game Awards, Judas appears to be a spiritual successor to BioShock's immersive sim gameplay. This time though, set on a disintegrating ship full of warring factions and an ominous impending threat. What we've seen so far is pretty darn stunning, and if it does land in 2026, you can probably expect this one to enter the Game of the Year conversation. But as important as Levine is to any gamer worth their salt, to the majority of the population, he might as well be John Smith when it comes to GTA. Judas holds no brand value, and a lot of time, talent, and money have been spent on it. A return on that investment really does need to happen. On the plus side, both titles share publisher Take-Two Interactive, so it's unlikely they'll let this carefully crafted game get steamrolled by their own subsidiary. More likely, it means we're going to be waiting even longer for this title, but maybe that's in its best interest. Marvel 1943: Rise of Hydra. 1943 has a lot going for it. It's set in an intriguing, less explored region of the Marvel brand, Hydra's evolution during World War II, with a chance to couple tense espionage with superhero bombast. A cast featuring Captain America, Black Panther, and the Howling Commandos at its center makes for a tasty combo as well. Another very cool thing here is that the lead creative is Amy Hennig, who you might know from creating the Uncharted series, so that's a pretty big draw card. Despite the massive brand association, this could still easily be smothered by the GTA title. Marvel fatigue is definitely a thing, and the results show in both box office numbers and the game sales. Unless Spider-Man's name is plastered on it, Marvel is a risky investment in the current market. See Midnight Suns, Guardians of the Galaxy, and Avengers. Not to mention, the jury is still out on the hype train for this one. So far, we've only seen cinematic trailers selling the concept, which definitely keeps gamers far more jaded these days. If they're smart, we're probably going to see a later release date for this one, perhaps even a full year, which might give it the legs to keep it going. Prince of Persia Remake. To think, not too long ago, Prince of Persia was one of Ubisoft's milestone brands. Originally a cutting-edge Apple II platformer, creator Jordan Mechner rebooted the franchise during the PS2 Xbox era with Sands of Time, a vibrant, enthralling adventure game that somersaulted 3D platforming into the modern age to the extent that its mechanics are still very much relevant and fantastic. Since then, the franchise has dipped and dived, with a bizarre new metal phase and countless reboots that didn't really resonate, despite some strong quality here and there. More importantly, one of the biggest reasons that IP got sidelined is when Ubisoft decided to go all in on the Assassin's Creed franchise. Making a straightforward remake of Sans does seem like a simple task, and was met with a warm reception. The original still holds up incredibly well, but it does need a little polish for modern gamers. That said, it's been an absolute struggle to complete for reasons that elude the public. Announced in 2020, it's seen multiple delays and studio swaps, with things now supposedly on track for a 2026 release. If this one emerges being as good as everyone hopes it's going to be, it deserves a fighting chance, so instead of releasing it anywhere near GTA, it's got so many delays you may as well keep delaying it at this point and give it a wide berth. Romeo is a dead man. If there's one developer who leans into his irreverent reputation more than any other, it's arguably Suda51. Happily wearing his wild child credentials on his sleeve after breaking onto the international scene with cult hit Killer 7, a game that reveled in obtuse storytelling and experimental mechanics while delivering a one-of-a-kind experience, for a brief period, Suda51 was fairly productive, pumping out a series of third-person action games for the PS3 and 360 era that were full of wild concepts, pitch-black humor, and full-on bloodletting. We're talking No More Heroes, Lollipop Chainsaw, and Killer is Dead. However, the game design never quite matched his ideas, and sales began to wane, leading to him becoming less prominent. Romeo, though, looks to be a full-fledged big-budget return, with a wacky plot straight from his playbook, and previews that claim the combat is some of the most polished he's delivered. The T is set for him to absolutely knock this one out of the park. Unfortunately, you know what we're doing on this list so far, he's chosen a woeful release window. Rockstar is the developer that brought irreverency to mainstream games in the first place, and Suda will have no chance against the mid-year behemoth. At this point, it's probably best to delay a full year and actually give this unique title a chance to make a mark. 007 First Light. Bond video games have been around since, well, pretty much the start of video games, but there was a lot of hit and miss, largely miss, that is until the seismic force that was GoldenEye arrived on the N64. Since then, there's been a flood of 007 linked gaming experiences, some mixed, others strong, with highlights like Everything or Nothing, Nightfire, and even the overlooked Bloodstone. But then, nothing for nearly 2 gaming generations. Gamers are in luck though, as our ice-cold martini drinker is back in action. Fronted by Hitman developer IO Interactive in a collaboration that really should fit hand in glove. A recent 30+ minute state of play further confirmed this notion. It seems to be a perfect match of Hitman's interactive environments and intuitive problem solving, along with an impressively big budget and exciting set pieces. James Bond will return indeed. With all this positive buzz and a March release date next year, 2 months before GTA is set to arrive, why is this one on this list? Well, because of GTA 6. That's why. The title is essentially the elephant in the room if the elephant were the entire room. There's very little oxygen left for anyone in its vicinity. Of course, the Bond IP holds weight, but with its long absence, younger gamers might just stick to GTA Online and save their pocket money to splurge on the title that's a guaranteed return on investment. It's 50-50 at this point. Vampire the Masquerade Bloodlines 2. It feels like there isn't a year that goes by without a video game related to the World of Darkness tabletop RPG being announced, entering development, or quietly releasing to little reception. There's no denying the brand's strength within its niche, but its efforts into cross-media have been a little dubious. The one title that still beat the trend with gamers is Vampire the Masquerade Bloodlines. Released in 2004, its initial launch was a bug-filled disaster, but years of fan fixes revealed a rich, deep RPG that fully immersed players in the lore, earning it a well-deserved cult classic status. Fast forward to 2019, a proper sequel was announced to much excitement. However, production has since faced delays, key creative firings, and a full studio switch from Hardsuit Labs to the Chinese room, effectively scrapping the previous work and starting again. Previews suggest something special should be taking shape, but it's gonna need a real chance to shine. Given the original was crushed by launching on the same day as Half-Life 2, let's hope that Paradox Interactive decides not to help history repeat itself. Tides of Annihilation. At the moment, there seems to be a slew of third-person combat titles emerging from the East. Set in a fantasy-tinged apocalypse with slick mechanics and a hint of an intriguing plot, Tides ticks all these familiar boxes. However, when revealed at the February 2025 State of Play, it seemed to really resonate with gamers as the standout title. The reason for this could be that the combat looks absolutely stellar and fun to play, and there does seem to be a bunch of depth there as well. There appears to be a lot of thought put into the storyline and lore, with the unique setting of a devastated London very refreshing, and the trailer suggesting the main character's arc will be genuinely involving rather than just using her as pretty window dressing. That said, we know what it will inevitably go up against in mid-2026, and that is a big risk. If it does deliver on its promise, this could absolutely be a breakout sleeper hit like Clair Obscur or Stellar Blade, but it really does need that chance to float or it will sink. As Thieves. A standout reveal at the 2024 Game Awards, this PvPvE title bolstered the name of the legendary Warren Spector as a creative. It also hinted at a world that looked like a mashup of Thief and Dishonored, and showcased gameplay to pull off daring heists while battling or teaming up with other players. Thieves has a unique spin on the formula with a bunch of fun, stealth, and daring that a lot of other games in that genre avoid in favor of trend chasing. While Spector's name has been absent from anything relevant for a little over 2 decades, he remains a living legend, responsible of course for the Thief series, and that's clearly an inspiration for this game. As a new IP in the online space, it will need room to find its footing. The studio would probably be clever to release when the hype of GTA Online dies down a little bit, although that might be asking the impossible. Nioh 3. Not the first Souls-like releasing in 2026, nor the last mentioned in this list, Nioh might be the most popular of all Souls-like spin-offs though, carving out a space that several other developers have struggled to find, not to mention their own rival output in the subgenre. One reason it may have particularly resonated is that Nioh managed to jump on that bandwagon before it was, well, a big bandwagon, so they stole some of that fan base before the genre became flooded. More importantly though, Team Ninja was making epic boss battles, breakneck action, and controller-smashingly difficult games, the Ninja Gaiden series of course, well before Demon's Souls ever entered development. All Nioh did was place those core strengths into a more digestible formula that had become the industry standard. Despite some critics saying it looks like more of the same, some people say the same is absolutely fine as far as Nioh is concerned, so its third entry does have a chance for a lucrative next-year slot. It is releasing in February, so it might have enough time before everybody moves over to GTA 6, or at least a lot of people do, so we'll keep our fingers crossed, but maybe not count the chickens just yet. That was confusing mixed metaphors. Lords of the Fallen 2, Mortal Shell 2, and Code Vein 2. This entry is kind of a cheat, but on a closer look, all of these games do face the same conditions with their TBA 2026 release slots. They're sequels to mid-tier, totally serviceable Souls-like games that had a lot of people becoming a fan of them and playing them all the way through, but not a lot of people were doing backflips over the announcements of the sequels. Generic as they all felt, hats off to the new ideas that they tried to bring to the table. The Lords of the Fallen reboot featured an always available overlapping world for double exploration, Mortal Shell introduced its hardened block mechanic and ready-made shell class system, and Code Vein offered an anime aesthetic and a permanent AI support character. Regardless, these titles are still overshadowed by From Software's iconic games, and didn't do much with the genre beyond satisfying players who needed a fix while they're waiting for the next big FromSoft release. There's absolutely still room for these AA sequels to find their niche, especially if they're delivering something even better than last time, but they will need to be careful about those release windows. None has the pedigree to compete with 2026's Nioh 3 or From Software's The Duskbloods, let alone GTA 6. Atomic Heart 2. When Atomic Heart 2 was nearing release, it was smothered with hype. Loads of people very excited to have something to fill that absence of a BioShock game in their digital library. It had a stunningly realized world, set in a fascinating alternative 1955 USSR, full of sci-fi robots and utopian design. Things did look really promising. Then, it was released and received a mixed reception. While several aspects did pay off, namely the design, environments, and slick gun combat, it faltered when it came to its crass protagonist, lukewarm plotline, and average boss fights. Regardless, the potential was there for a follow-up to stick the landing, because it had so very much going for it. Earlier this year, a lot of people were ecstatic to hear that a sequel was, in fact, in the works, and developer Mundfish has basically dedicated themselves to making it bigger and better than the first one. All exciting words. Expansive environments, inventive traversal, and a more ambitious, bizarre narrative have all been revealed, marking significant progress in the right direction. This could very well be the payoff that fans are waiting for. All that potential and renewed excitement could still be for naught though when it comes to the midpoint of the year. What a game is gonna choose? A franchise with the potential that stumbles a little on its first entry, or the bona fide game event of the decade being the minimal amount of time? The choice is non-existent, so Mundfish would be better to steer clear of 2026 in its entirety, or it may face the consequences. Phantom Blade Zero. Another day, another PS5 exclusive third-person action title featuring a fantasy Eastern setting. Must be Tuesday. That said though, this one does look pretty cool. With 5-star graphics, ominous environments, and blistering combat mechanics, this one carries an impressive level of polish that developers from China seem to take in stride. Zero really stands out from the crowd when compared to similar titles, with all eyes on it to be one of the most exciting releases in its arena next year, despite being a new IP. It's never a bad sign when Sony actually invests in these types of games as a publisher. Lost Soul aside being a slight exception there, this is lining up to fill the slot that Stellar Blade and Black Myth Wukong once occupied. While its fresh on the scene energy helps it rise above 2026 competitors like Nioh 3, it has no chance of matching the next entry in the Vice City saga. Releasing late in the year though should give it enough breathing room to grab the people who are more interested in that kind of genre game, and it should pick up some awards if it's particularly good in those genre categories. The Duskbloods. If there's one thing From Software fans have been clamoring for, it's a follow-up to Bloodborne. The studio's new title, The Duskbloods, certainly leans towards that tough-as-nails classic, with its gothic horror edge, Lovecraftian beasts, and sword and gunplay combat. It also, though, adds a fresh steampunk aesthetic. If anybody is going to be able to stand up against Rockstar and the towering behemoth that is GTA, it's probably FromSoft. Unfortunately though, this title has a handful of reasons to be cautious about releasing next year. First, it's a brand new IP. Second, despite Hidetaka Miyazaki directing, this isn't From's next big epic. It's a smaller project designed to occupy a niche that's similar to this year's Elden Ring Night Rain, focusing on co-op roguelike gameplay rather than an expansive trademark campaign. Lastly, it's a Switch 2 exclusive, an odd move given From Software's limited history with Nintendo and Sony's investment in their parent company, Kadokawa. It's arguable that the install base for fans who are clamoring for a Bloodborne-light kind of experience is probably fairly limited, as is those who are looking to play it on the Switch 2. Still, GTA 6 won't be appearing on that hardware anytime soon, so the Duskbloods could fill a gap. Whether anyone notices its release amid the noise of Rockstar's juggernaut is, of course, another question entirely. Onimusha, Way of the Sword. As mentioned in the earlier Pragmata entry, Capcom has really been on a roll lately when it comes to revamping their classic IP. Resident Evil 7, Monster Hunter World, Street Fighter 6, and Devil May Cry 5 all rejuvenated their respective franchises, turning fading names into peak series entries that climbed the sales charts and managed to regain cultural relevance. Onimusha is their long-dormant IP that sadly sputtered out near the tail end of the PS2 era. Essentially, for the uninitiated, it's like Resident Evil with swords and magic, and delivered 4 strong games with barely a misstep. But market interest eventually dried up, and the series slipped into obscurity. The reboot, though, aims to breathe new life into the slumbering franchise. It's built in the gorgeous RE engine and promises to blend that really fantastic old-school structure with modern polish so that newcomers will enjoy it as well. While a flood of similarly themed games threatens to burn out the appeal of Samurai vs. Demons gameplay, we can't forget that this franchise was the originator, finally now coming home to roost. All fair points, but to stand a real chance, it will need to steer clear of GTA 6's launch window. Current market thirst for Onimusha is still a gamble, and the series deserves a release slot where it can shine on its own. Resonance, A Plague Tale Legacy. The 2 Plague Tale games are criminally slept on and the perfect example of just what a AA game can be, with Asobo pouring every single thing they had into making them as excellent as they could be. Lush historical visuals, an emotionally grueling narrative, tense stealth, and satisfying action, as well as the pure horror of so very many rats. The games earned a solid reputation, but they never really entered the Game of the Year conversation, despite the fact that their quality could rival some of Sony's first-party single-player hits. Amicia and Hugo's story came to a thorough end in Part 2, giving the developers an easy chance to tie a bow on the saga. But a third title was revealed earlier this year, introducing a brand new character, a legit thief this time, and an enticing new region and area. If Asobo could recreate medieval France so vividly, imagining what they might be able to do with the overlooked Minoan age is drool-worthy. That said, despite how strong the earlier entries are, and they absolutely have their fans, me among them, they didn't exactly set sales charts on fire, nor did they top any critical lists in particular. The fact that we're getting a spiritual successor at all feels lucky, and it really should steer clear of May 2026, or it could end up being the last one we see. Exodus. No one could argue that BioWare really did dominate the Western RPG market from the 90s all the way through the 2000s, rivaled only by Bethesda. Their high point was the landmark Mass Effect trilogy, a showcase of how to weave narrative threads and gamer investment on a massive blockbuster scale, which other ambitious franchises have struggled to match since. That said, the series did eventually lose its shine, and while a new entry is on the way, the studio today is a shadow of its former self, with far less anticipation for what's next. That's what makes Exodus so intriguing. Several key former BioWare creatives, alongside talent from Naughty Dog and 343 Industries, are building a galaxy-spanning action RPG that scratches the familiar itch of exploring distant systems, as well as meeting alien species and bonding with a starship crew. It may aim a little smaller than Mass Effect, but everything we've seen so far looks very cool and polished. Also, apparently, you get to beat up a power-armored bear, so take that as you will. Still, big studio talent doesn't guarantee success. Just look at the recent struggles at the shuttered developer The Initiative. Early previews are definitely promising, but Exodus will need a carefully chosen release window, or it risks being yet another new ambitious franchise that never takes flight. Fable. While Xbox's core first-party pillars are, of course, Gears, Halo, and Forza, there used to be a fourth, and that was, of course, Fable. Guided by Peter Molyneux's Lionhead Studios, Fable stood out as a tongue-in-cheek take on fantasy RPGs, known for its dry British humour and the freedom to play the campaign any way you liked. Sadly, a string of weak spin-offs and cancelled projects led to Lionhead's closure, and the IP then being shelved in 2016. Xbox did eventually hand the reins of the game over to Playground Games, the developer behind Forza Horizon. Though they lacked RPG experience, their technical prowess and UK roots made them a logical and exciting choice. The gameplay preview shown during the June 2024 Xbox Games Showcase highlighted impressive motion capture, ambitious story beats, and clear AAA production values, promising a full-scale modern Fable adventure. Originally targeted for a 2025 release, since then it has slipped into a TBA 2026 window, which could prove fatal. The franchise has been dormant long enough to miss an entire generation of new players. If everyone's too busy playing GTA 6, this could drop out without a trace, so here's hoping Xbox aims for a late-year slot. That's the end of our list, but let me know down in that comment box what you reckon about GTA 6's launch, and if you think anybody else is going to be able to survive its absolute domination of that release period. If you do want to know about more games that are coming out that you should really keep an eye on, we've got a video for you, because of course we do. So click it, check it out, have fun. It's going to be a good one. I'll see you again soon.